Friday could be Lane Kiffin's last day at Ole Miss. But it's not all bad news for the Rebels.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and the number one sports podcast network out there. Thank you all so much for making that the case. Shout out to my everydayers. And we're talking Iron Bowl today. Oh, my goodness. I only get to do it once a year because it only happens once a year. I'm excited to talk about that. Nebraska fans are not going to like the third segment on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. So, Ole Miss is in the midst of calendar chaos, calendar-driven chaos. And if you want to blame Lane Kiffin for entertaining the idea of leaving Ole Miss, you can certainly do that. You can't hold him 100% responsible for your frustrations because, as I've talked about several times this week, the college football calendar is horrible, it's terrible, it's dumb, it makes no sense, and it leads to situations just like this. So the Rebels are having arguably their best season in the history of their program, and their head coach might not be there come Monday. Maybe he will. Maybe he will shock everyone and stick around in Oxford. I've got my doubts, but hey, nothing's been made official as I'm recording this show. And by the way, Ole Miss fans, when I began this show saying it's not all bad news, it's like 99% bad news, but here's the 1% that is good. Ole Miss is going to show up in Starkville on Friday and play Mississippi State. I'll talk about the upset potential of that game in just a moment. But if Ole Miss loses that game, I don't think they're going to get held out of the playoff. And I don't believe that they should. This is very different from Florida State a few years ago, who, before I had a show where I was opining about such matters, I felt that Florida State should not have been into the playoff. Because as I've explained several times, some of you might be new here, so I'll give you a brief refresher. If I were a member of the College Football Playoff Selection Committee and I were assembling the list of teams that I'd want to put in, I would have a 10-point scale with half numbers involved. I don't think I need to go in a decimal place to, 0.8 and 0.7. No, we can just go whole numbers and half numbers. And I would give 5 points for most deserving. That's based on your resume. And 5 points for who I felt was the best. That's a little bit more of the subjective angle. And Florida State would have been a 5 out of 5 for most deserving. And they would have been maybe a 2 out of 5 for best once you remove Jordan Travis. Now, in the 12-team playoff, it's different because there's more access, theoretically, to allow for something like that to happen. So I don't think this situation is directly comparable to that because you don't have the same margin. If, however, Ole Miss loses on Friday, what if Mississippi State blows them out and the Lane Kiffin drama seems to be boiling over? It's clearly infected, the entire locker room's mentality, and they just can't play at the same level they did earlier this year. Well, that could factor into their decision, but Ole Miss has a really good resume. Ole Miss has got to win. Oklahoma winning and being in the top 10, boy, that makes Ole Miss's resume look darn good. A road top 10 victory. How many teams can say that? I mean, there are plenty of folks out there that don't think Oregon should be ranked ahead of Ole Miss. I actually don't. In my top 25, I'll throw it up on YouTube. I do have Oregon ranked one slot ahead of Ole Miss, but for those that don't have that, I don't think that's highly objectionable because the case you'd make is, well, Ole Miss has a road win over a top 10 team in Oklahoma, and Oregon's best win right now is USC. Like, okay, well, that's fair. If you don't see the Penn State game the way that I do, that's perfectly fine. But Ole Miss is still sitting there at number 7 in the playoff rankings, and if they were to go to 10-2, do you think they would fall out? It might depend on what happens elsewhere, but I really don't think that they would. Because what the committee has shown you, as I talked about yesterday, is they want no part, it seems, of Miami or BYU in the playoff unless they automatically qualify to get there, and they have to put them into the playoff. But the good news for Ole Miss is if they lose, I think they'll still be in. I think they should still be in because I think those players have earned it, and I think their resume will be good enough. By the way, I'll tell you this right now. If it comes down to 10-2 Ole Miss or 10-2 Alabama, I'm putting in 10-2 Ole Miss. Alabama didn't have their coach leaving hanging over them for their bad loss. And it would be a bad loss for Ole Miss. No question about it. But if they win the game and Lane Kiffin still decides to leave to go be the head coach of LSU or Florida, which are the only two realistic options at this point, I think LSU is more likely. If that does happen, well, you know what? Then you get to see what it's really like inside that locker room, how tight everybody is. And yeah, you'd miss Lane Kiffin as a play caller, but none of the players can leave. So the same physical team that's capable of not just getting to the playoff, but I think of winning a game or two is still going to be there. You're not going to have a mass exodus of guys that go into the portal. At least I don't suspect that that'd be the case. It's technically possible. I don't think it's likely. So getting to this game against Mississippi State, the question will, of course, be how motivated are the Rebels to go out and play this football game? How much do they know? How much do they think they know? How much does it bother them? All those questions are valid. You are going against a Mississippi State team that's got everything to play for here. Bowl eligibility in Jeff Lebby's second season, a second SEC win, which would be a big deal. They probably feel like they should have two after they blew a 17-point lead at home to Texas a few weeks ago. A win over a top 10 opponent, a win over their rival. It would be a statement sort of win. Mississippi State's got everything to play for. Does Ole Miss say, you know what? Forget whatever our head coach is doing. We're playing for each other. We're playing for our fans. Or do they go, man, he's not commit. It'd be easy to go in either direction, quite frankly. I can see players' heads going there, and it's just a matter of where their heads go once kickoff actually starts on Friday in the Egg Bowl. Now, for the matchup itself, yeah, Ole Miss is a 7.5-point road favorite for a reason. If they play their game, they will win that. They will win and they will cover, just like Georgia did a few weeks ago. Because Mississippi State has a capable offense. I think that they can move the ball on the Ole Miss defense, which has been susceptible at times this year. That's nothing new in the Lane Kiffin era. The difference is that Mississippi State probably needs a new defensive coordinator going into next year. At the very least, they need new defensive personnel because, boy, they have been really porous on that side of the ball. So Trinidad Chambliss and the rest of this Ole Miss offense should be able to have plenty of success. Now, this is not one of my best bets for the week. Make of that whatever you will. I am going to take Ole Miss to win the game. They'll have a home playoff game in Oxford in which Lane Kiffin may very well not be the head coach, or he could surprise us all. That possibility exists. But when you're on the road, your rival's got everything to play for, and the rumors around your head coach, don't know that I would take Ole Miss to win big. If they do, emphatic statement, not by Lane Kiffin, but by that locker room and the guys that are in it, and that should bolster confidence when they do get a home playoff game and what they could accomplish there, even though their playoff game would be the first matchup without Lane Kiffin as their head coach and play caller. But cross that bridge when you get to it. I'll take the Rebels to win 31-28. They win a close one in Starkville. What about the Iron Bowl? Is it as likely as everybody thinks? First, this episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. So all the games I'm talking about this week and we'll talk about and pick tomorrow, if you want to bet them, FanDuel is the place to go and do that because they've got the lines, they've got the point totals, they have got the money lines, they have got prop bets. FanDuel's got everything you need to make rivalry weekend, which is going to be epic, completely and totally epic this week, FanDuel can make it even better. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, let's talk Iron Bowl. The stakes on this game, not the Omaha stakes, the regular stakes, cannot be overstated. The dominoes that could fall if Auburn pulls this upset, which our friends at FanDuel think is possible, it's Alabama minus 5.5 this weekend. If Auburn wins this game, there will be questions about Kalen DeBoer's job security. There will be questions about whether DJ Durkin should in fact be hired as Auburn's head coach, serving as the interim here. I thought he needed to beat Vanderbilt and Alabama for that to happen, but you know what? The ramifications of this game at Jordan-Hare, boy, it'd be a vibe that's hard to resist if you're the Auburn athletic director. You would knock Alabama out of the playoff. I don't want to see them anywhere near the college football playoff at 9-3 with a loss to Florida State on the resume. Just like I talked about yesterday, Texas should be nowhere near the college football playoff, or even, frankly, a discussion when they lost to Florida and have 3 losses on the year. So there could be a lot of dominoes that would fall. Maybe Kalen DeBoer would decide, nope, this is not for me. Let's get in that old coaching carousel, which is still spinning round and round and round and round and round. It goes. We could have a hire in Corvallis soon. There's been a hire at Colorado State. Of course, James Franklin's at Virginia Tech. We're waiting on LSU in Florida. Penn State is still out there. UCLA is still out there. A lot of options. A lot of options. Speaking of Alabama, by the way, Jamarcus Shepard could be a head coach real soon. Just keep an eye on that. But for Alabama in this game, I don't come on here thinking about this matchup and wonder, is this the week they're finally going to run the ball? Is this the week they're finally going to... No, I have one question about Alabama in this game. Can they win the turnover battle? Notice I did not say, very intentionally might I add, turns out everything I say on this show is, most everything I say on this show is rather intentional. I did not say Alabama needs to limit their turnovers, but the Iron Bowl has a tendency to just go crazy. So does 6 total turnovers in the game where Alabama has 2 but forces 4, does that feel like it can't happen? Does anything feel like it can't happen in this game? Auburn hasn't beaten Alabama since 2019. Do you know who last beat Alabama as Auburn's quarterback? It was Bo Nix. That's how long it has been. It doesn't feel that way because the last 2 times that they've played this game at Auburn, as they will this upcoming weekend, you've had the 4th and 31 and a 4 overtime thriller. And Alabama has found a way in a pretty low scoring game to win, 27-24 and 24-22. So you look at this game and go, Alabama against Oklahoma struggled with the turnover, struggled with the sloppiness and execution. Now, Auburn's had those same sorts of problems all season long. It's a big reason why Hugh Freeze is no longer their head coach. Their execution and consistency has not been there. Speaking of which, can I know ahead of time to inform my pick which DJ Durkin defense is going to show up? Because before he became the head coach, and I think this is one of the biggest knocks against him potentially becoming the head coach after getting the interim tag, formerly the defensive coordinator for the Tigers under Hugh Freeze, once he became the head coach, they went on the road and could not stop Vanderbilt if you had offered him $10 million on the spot. So is that version of Auburn's defense going to show up? Or are we going to get first half defense Auburn that kept Texas A&M to, what was it, 22, 16, 17? Somewhere in that range. A&M we know can score in a hurry and has done so against most of the teams they have played this season. So FanDuel has Alabama favored by 5.5. And guess what? I am not going to make the decision. I'm going to make Alabama prove it because this just feels like it could be wild. The line is so small, it feels like Vegas knows something. Bama wins by 2. 23-21. 23-21. Alabama finds a way. They punch their ticket to the playoff. I'd have them in the playoff if they win this game, most likely. Most likely. A lot of things would have to happen. I don't think that they would. For those watching on YouTube, you can see in my top 25, I have Bama at 10 coming into this week, meaning if everything holds and everybody wins and there's no major upsets anywhere, Bama would be my last team in as an at-large, and then the ACC and G5 champions respectively would get in for teams 11 and 12, and both Miami and Notre Dame would miss the playoff. That's how I'd do it. That's how I would do it, kind of like Iron Man. That's how Dad did it. That's how America does it, and it's worked out pretty well so far. But, of course, I don't influence the College Football Playoff Committee. That is to the chagrin of myself and, frankly, the entire sport. So, another matchup this week that was on my mind. Doesn't have massive playoff implications, but you see I've got Georgia Tech down there at 19. The playoff committee has them outside the top 20, which at 9-2 still seems a little crazy. I know they don't have hugely great wins on there. The losses are not spectacularly good, though Pitt is ranked as a result of beating them in Atlanta last week. Georgia and Georgia Tech played an absolute barn burner of a game. 8 overtime. I'm hearing reports as I'm recording this show that somehow they just played another overtime game in Athens last year. Or another overtime period, I should say. Darn. Ruined the punchline. Anyway, you get what I was going for. So, Georgia Tech is a pretty sizable underdog in this game. Again, I'm taking the points. Sitting at 11.5 as I record the show according to FanDuel. Do I think Georgia wins? Yes. Georgia hasn't had a consistent tendency. They did it against Mississippi State. They haven't had a consistent tendency to blow anybody out. You know what? No, I'm gonna go against my better judgment here. I'm going to do it. 13.5. I think Georgia rolls Georgia Tech. That Yellow Jackets defense is not good. I'm changing this mid-recording. I had everything lined up. Too many points. Way too many points. And it is my consistent rule of thumb. Take the points in a rivalry game once it's big enough for your score prediction. And I'm not going to do that here. Georgia's offense is humming. Gunnar Stockton is playing at a really high level. Georgia Tech's defense might not stop the Bulldogs all day. I think the over-under for Georgia's punts should be set at 2.5. 2.5 should be the number of over-under punts that Georgia has, and they might go under. They might go under in this spot. So Georgia wins 42-27. They win the cover at Georgia Tech in this one. Should Georgia Tech be in the playoff if they win this game? It's an interesting thought. They'll be 10-2 with a win against the top 5 team in the country. Could they go from 23 to in the playoff? Probably not. Probably not. That weak ACC non-conference slate, not that they didn't try to play good games, it's just that they didn't win very many of them. I mean, you had the Florida State game, but that just kept looking flukier as the season went on. Results still matter. But, yeah, I think that's coming back to bite Georgia Tech right here. So I don't think they can get in the playoff, even if they win this game. And Georgia is going to be in the playoff whether they win or lose this game. So we are during the season. There will be plenty more games for me to talk about on tomorrow's show. This is going to feel like an off-season topic, but holy smokes, Nebraska. First, this episode brought to you by Omaha Steaks. The holidays always feel a little easier when you already know the perfect gift. It can be stressful, and Omaha Steaks makes it almost too simple. Whether you're treating yourself this season or sending something memorable to family and friends, Omaha Steaks delivers handcrafted perfection right to their door. And this week is the best time to jump in because their cyber sale is here and the deals are huge. I'll tell you about those in a moment, but first, let's talk about the meats that they can get to you or your friends or your family, whoever you want to send it to. Maybe a little bit of both. Porque no los dos. The quality is exactly what you hope for. They've got incredibly tender steaks, rich flavor, and meals that make hosting or weeknight cooking easier. That is something you should want to explore. Save big on unforgettable gifts. Get ready for this with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off. That's half off site-wide and an extra 20% off select favorites during their cyber sale. And for an additional $35 off, use the promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com. Promo code COLLEGE. Terms apply. See site for details. Check out omahasteaks.com. So there's a rumor out there put out by CBS Sports. Nothing's happened on this front in confirmed fashion yet, but Dylan Raiola might want to leave Nebraska. He got hurt as the Cornhuskers were on their way to having a successful season. They're going to a bowl game for the second straight year. That's not nothing. But last year they finished the season with 7 wins. They might finish with 7 wins again. They were 6-2 at one point this year. And again, the second half, they just can't keep it together. Last year was because of poor play. This year, because of Raiola's injury. Heck, they might have beaten USC at home a few weeks ago, but that was the last time Dylan Raiola was healthy playing in a football game, and he left in the middle of that one, changed things in a big way. But Nebraska is a program that some folks had as a dark horse playoff contender. I don't think that was a crazy dark horse pick. Not that they were some incredible team. They're good. They have some nice pieces. They have room to grow. Michigan exposed them earlier this year for not having the physicality up front in either direction that they need to go be a college football playoff team. Minnesota exposed that as well, sacked Raiola 9 times in that game. So I think that for Nebraska, they're on the upward trajectory, and it's a fan base that I'll just tell you straight up, I pull for them. I don't know if there's a fan base in the country that has had their heart ripped out of their chests, metaphorically, but it's been close to literally at times, as much as Nebraska. I don't know. Who is it? Name the fan base. I don't know who it is. This would be pretty crushing. Now, has Dylan Raiola been the entire Nebraska offense? No. Has he been really good? Yes. His recruitment to Nebraska was a really important moment for Matt Rule and this program to let everyone know, hey, we're not just here to be a good story to get to a bowl game. We are trying to make waves. Dylan Raiola was a wave-making addition. And if you found a way to lose him somehow, whether that's getting outbid or he doesn't like the culture, doesn't vibe with the coaching staff, whatever the reason would actually be, he would be one of the hottest commodities in the transfer portal at quarterback, which, as I've told you before, and this story is just another potential addition. Sam Levitt at Arizona State, potential addition. Jared Kiave-Sangopolatele at Cal, watch for that guy. Drew Mestamaker at North Texas, maybe he follows Eric Morris to Oklahoma State. This is going to be a much more loaded transfer quarterback cycle than last one. So if Raiola were to leave, I think you'd feel some of the air come out of Big Red. Now, they could go find someone else. Heck, maybe they'd pick up one of the guys that I just talked about. Maybe they'd feel like they could actually upgrade from Dylan Raiola at quarterback. But I'm just saying from a perception standpoint, boy, that would hurt. That would sting. Now, this has not happened. He's not in the portal. This is just a report that, hey, he's considering leaving. Think about his head coach, Matt Rule, and the example that he just saw. Matt Rule was tied to the Penn State job. Maybe he was interested. Maybe he wasn't. But what did he get out of it? An extension and a raise. And once jobs started coming available, what did Curt Cignetti get? Extension and a raise. What did Rhett Lashley get at SMU? Extension and a raise. This is not something you think about typically with college quarterbacks leveraging their school to try to get more money out of it. I'm not saying that Dylan Raiola is doing that. I'm not even saying if this is taking place, Dylan Raiola is the one who's advocating for that particular plan of action. It might be his camp. Maybe it's him. Maybe it's both. I don't know. The thought crossed my mind. That's all I'm trying to say, is that we see this in the NFL or the NBA or with college coaches. Maybe this is just the first high-profile example of a college quarterback publicly leveraging potential opportunities to go elsewhere to get a bigger NIL deal out of the school that he's currently at. Frankly, I hope that's what it is, because I would hate this for Nebraska. For everything they've been through and all the promise and the hope, man, no matter what the team's going through or the shortcomings they might have, those fans show up and pack Lincoln every single week. It's a great fan base. They are loyal. They are passionate. They have been waiting. And I would really hate this for them. And if Raiola went into the portal, yeah, all the typical heavy hitters for a transfer quarterback services like that would certainly pop up. Talk about Miami, talk about Indiana, talk about some SEC schools. What does Lane Kiffin want to do? If he were to wind up at LSU, which I think is going to happen, hasn't yet as I'm recording this show. If he goes to LSU, who's his first-year quarterback? Because if you're bailing on Ole Miss before the playoff run, you're doing that so that you can get a signing class and so you can get a transfer cycle, meaning your expectations for year one in Baton Rouge or Gainesville would be really high. Now, I've talked in the past about how I don't necessarily see that as the right way to approach this from the new school standpoint. Obviously, Lane Kiffin is the best coaching target available, and so you do whatever it takes to get him. But if he had told you, I want to coach this season first and then I'll show up, and it might not be till after or in the middle of the portal cycle, yeah, you should be thinking more about what your program will be in 2027 and beyond than what it immediately needs to be in 2026. Just my 2 cents. Don't chase short-term success at the expense of the long-term outlook. That's the point I'm trying to make. But I think that if Dylan Raiola went into the portal, man, a lot of schools would come calling. He's a talented guy with 2 years of experience, 2 years of eligibility. Sure, unfortunately, he's coming off of an injury. I don't think we know at this point in time whether or not that's something that could significantly hinder him in the long run. But between now and late August, there's a long way to go. And sure, you'd like to have him around for spring football if he's at a new place. But I would really hate this for Nebraska. So for the Cornhuskers' sake, I hope it just means they need to give him a little more NIL money and he sticks around, because I think Matt Rule's building something good. They were trending towards being an 8-9 win team. I had them as a 9-win team before the year. Now they play Iowa on Friday for the right to go over their FanDuel win total of 7.5 because, well, Dylan Raiola went down. They lost to USC, and then it turns out it's difficult to win with a backup quarterback. And not every place has a great solution, and Nebraska is not one of those places. And I don't think it's not what you'd like to have, but it's also just the reality. The guy behind him is behind him for a reason. And yeah, some places have a better backup plan than others. Nebraska is in that program at this point in time. So yeah, I think that overall, I still see encouraging signs. I see a lot of work to do, but the work to do for Nebraska is outside of Dylan Raiola. Sure, he can progress in this area and that, but it's not about him. That's the known entity. You're supposed to be able to rely on him. Suddenly you can't, you have to reset there. I think that could cause another year or two delay in Nebraska's efforts to move towards the top of the Big Ten or try to make the playoff one day. So I hope he stays. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.